Well faced. TGIF to you too, Patrick. Hi, Windsor, William. Who else is here today? Vlad and Tom and Tina, nice to meet you. Stan, Scott Pickering. Some of these names are pretty familiar to me. Patrick, how are you? Nigel, Nick, Nicholas, Michael, Martha, Martin, how are you? Hi, Lee, Kimster, how are you? Kevin, Joseph Kang a few times. Hi, Jess, how are you, my trading warrior brother? Yeah, I'm pretty happy, Martin. I'm glad you are. Jacques, how's it going? Gwen, were you able to find Mandy? Hello, Gordon, Gary. So I rarely do this. Forex Gal, how are you? I want to let each and every one of you know how much I appreciate you hanging out with us every day. Right? Hi, Ash, David, Darren, Clay, nice to meet you. Cosmin, Chantel, Shinten, Chi. Hi, BW. It's nice to see also familiar names that have been hanging out with me for a while. Anthony. Hello, Andy. Amanda's in the house. I bet everyone's really enjoying the private chat room with Amanda running the show in there, contributing, keeping it lively. Everyone enjoying the private room? Well, you know, I've been talking, yeah, it's very interesting that the Aussie is weak and the gold is hanging in there. They look okay, although the short yen was better. So let's get to the markets. Yesterday I pointed out, this is a daily Dixie. We held this 50-day moving average. We were here. Came back and tagged it exactly. Makes me think that there could be some type of rally off of here if today's low holds. You know, you can't completely rule out the dollar bull's case. My bias is that eventually it will break it. But since I recommended being short guppy and the yen looks like it really has no life in it, I'll show it to you in a minute. But yesterday, at the beginning of the session, in the guppy, talked about it was my preferred short of the pairs. I was up here yesterday at the face opening 940, so you have about 80 pips made on it. We start taking out the 148 level, and this market has problems. I actually see us going to 44. So I know a lot of you guys that have followed me around. Also, I was looking, yeah, we'll take a look at that. Have followed me around, have probably noticed that my hit rate on calls is better. In fact, I can't think of a bum steer that I've provided for quite a while. So why is it different? Because I trade what I see and I look at what the team has. I trade what I see and then I have a team. Okay? That's the reason. That's the difference. Okay, so I know how many in here have had to retain an attorney in their lifetime? Anyone ever have to retain an attorney? I know I have. Ash, you probably have many times, right?
An attorney.
All right, anyway. Yeah, all right, okay. Anyway,
Dale.
Tom has had to, I've had to. I know you guys are just being shy. Anyway, when you retain an attorney, like Ash is saying, it always costs you, doesn't it? I mean, you don't win. Once you hire an attorney, they win, right?
Dale.
Yeah.
Good morning, my friend.
Good morning.
Does getting married to one counts as a retainer?
No, I would call that a long-term call option. a leap.
Oh, okay then. Okay.
Because you take, it's long, what's the acronym LEAP for? Long equity something, but they're leaps. And, you know, they're very long term and they only erode slowly over time.
Yeah, slow decay.
All right, but anyway, what I'm saying is when you retain a lawyer, it costs you. I'm recommending you retain ForexAnalytix. And you know what? You don't even have to come up with, you know, they all want money up front. You can retain us for $1 and check it out and see if you want to retain somebody else. You won't. So that's the point. With an attorney, it's always going to cost you money. And with us, there's a chance, and a decent chance, it's going to help you make money. So retain ForexAnalytix is my metaphor, analogy that I'm talking about. So also, you know, Blake's been bearish the yen forever, right? From the top up here. And then yesterday, even though we had risk on, you know, the S&P's rallied 20 points, we were here. And I said, look at these RSI readings, 820, 821, anything under 30 is pretty intense downside momentum. And then here we go. I said at least one more flush, and we're diverging a little bit, but this doesn't look like a bottom to me. It's going to mark time, and it's not. This is not the low. So I wouldn't mind if the dollar popped a little bit, since the yen doesn't look like it has much life in it, for the guppy to continue to deteriorate and hopefully break down under 148. Okay, so those are my views. I can't top what I called yesterday. I'm not going to try on a Friday. If there was an NFP, I might have a little bit of the action junkie come out of me and look to fade something. But I think you just stay with those trades I talked about if you're in them. But everyone else knows here, and give me a why, that when you're up 50 pips on something, you take half, right? And you tighten up your stops. So you can relax the whole weekend now. I don't mind taking positions home over the weekend. Hi, Kevin. In fact, people ask me that. And when you take, they go, well, Dale, do you take things home over the weekend? I say, sure. I can't relax unless I have something to worry about. Okay, so that's the end of my stand-up routine. I don't want to see any type of, you know, it's on the news right now. So, you know, men, behave yourself. Okay, it's all over the news. Behave yourself in the private trading room too. And I believe I'm going to hand it over to Nick, which is a special treat. So Nick is great, and I bet she's gone through it in her life, what some of these women are going through. But Nick, I know with your military background that if any guy ever got fresh with you caught him with a roundhouse.
You know,
right?
I think I might be a bit too old, because, like, for me, like, I find, like, people are getting offended about the smallest thing. Somebody putting their hand on your knee and stuff, or, you know, a blundering kind of approach, like, that's not sexual harassment. They have no idea. These people have no idea what real bad sexual harassment is.
Yeah. Harvey Weinstein type, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, he was really bad.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Really bad. But
yeah.
Do you know what? Do you think
but now you're saying
every single industry was like that?
Yeah.
Men, powerful men.
My mother went through it. She sold advertising. She went through it.
Yeah.
You know, all women went through it. But you're right. Then men are going to be afraid to even approach a woman to ask her out for a date eventually. You know, because it'll be sexual harassment because they're interested. Anyway, Great to have you here.
We're on the internet soon, aren't we? It's all going to be over.
So, Ziggy was asking early in the week, and I'm so glad you're here now. I believe Zig's in the house. He wanted to know if you could explain Bitcoin Cash. He doesn't understand Bitcoin Cash. And I did pass you the charts if you want to show them. Yeah, there you go.
I got the chart. So here's my Bitcoin. I'll talk about my Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Cash against Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a victim of its own success, really. There's a huge argument going on in the community about how to speed up the transactions and make Bitcoin more efficient. Because if they don't, then Bitcoin in its current form probably won't succeed. And so because it's a decentralized community, there's been huge arguments about how to do it, and this is what we're seeing right now is an example of it. So right now we have Bitcoin Cash, which is kind of now known Bitcoin Cash, which is the one that forked off, and we have the original Bitcoin, which is known as Bitcoin Core.
Watch your language.
In August, if you were holding Bitcoin Core, then you got an equal amount of Bitcoin Cash for free, because they decided that they would start this new blockchain and use the same ledger and the same everything up until the fork. It was called a hard fork. Everything up till that date and time when they split on both of the blockchains are the same, and then they split. So transactions thereafter split, and they decided that to do that way and then let the two compete. So whichever was the better coin or faster, or that most people adopted, because all Bitcoin transactions are handled by miners. So the same people who mine Bitcoins using computer and electricity also handle all the transactions. And so they need miners to handle the transactions for Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. So there's part of the equation is also how profitable it is to mine each one. And they've got
Have you ever tried it, Nick?
Yeah, like I have both.
You've done it?
Yeah,
like
I have both.
Is it very time consuming? I mean, what's the process like?
It takes time. It can take time. It can take a few minutes. Yeah, sometimes it can take a couple of hours to get a Bitcoin transaction done.
I see.
Yeah, so the futures are going to be quite fast, obviously. Right, and if you are trading Bitcoin CFDs, you can do it immediately. But if you're buying and selling real Bitcoin, sometimes it slows down. And the miners, they'll get a pool of transactions that are waiting to be done, and they'll do the one that pays the most money first. So
yeah, that's what John McAfee, I read. John McAfee, the guy McAfee Security,
right.
he has like a whole crew, and that's all they do is mine.
Yeah, right. And so that keeps the fees high. So basically, the original Bitcoin was limited to the size of the blockchain, and it couldn't handle the transactions. So they devised a couple of ways to do it. One was to make it bigger, so you double the size, from like imagine going from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. And the other way, SegWit, it was called segregated witness, and it basically splits it. So the original Bitcoin, if you think of it like banking, the original Bitcoin is kept for like big transactions like wire transfers, and then they have a segregated witness, a segregated ledger for the smaller transactions like your little ATM payments and smaller payments. But that would then not be decentralized because somebody has to administer all that, and it would also. And so that's why a lot of people didn't like it. That's no longer decentralized either. So a lot of the kind of diehard proponents didn't want anyone to have control of a ledger, or so it's been a big fight like this. But basically, one of them will win, and it's going to be very volatile. Now, the proposal for the other camp who wanted to Bitcoin Core to use the segregated witness system, so you have another layer, another blockchain, so you keep the original Bitcoin the same size, but then you have another one. They cancelled the hard fork last week, But now a small group of miners who really wanted it to happen are doing it today. So that's slowed down today, all the Bitcoin transactions. And we're seeing a bit of Bitcoin for me has reached a bit of a technical level at 8,000. It's a very, very technical level because it's called a big round number. And Bitcoin really likes big round numbers. So the high that we had in September was 5,000. When we pulled back in November, we pulled back to 6,000. Bitcoin really likes round numbers. So 8,000 is one of those kind of logical levels where we're going to pause.
Okay.
But
did that help?
The thing I was going to say about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is that it has to be profitable to mine for the miners to do it. Otherwise, they just stop doing it. So one of the risks to Bitcoin Cash is if it doesn't increase in value relative to its difficulty, because at the moment it's a lot easier to mine than Bitcoin, but it's a lot less rewarding. So it has to be relative. So there has to be incentive for the miners to stick with Bitcoin Cash because they're in it to make money. So if Bitcoin Cash doesn't increase in value, then it could die because of the miners. So
interesting. What
here's
effect?
The Bitcoin Cash chart. So wow. We had a pullback, and this is I know. So in a matter of 3 days, we went from sort of 8,800 to 53,000. So that's quite a rally. This was obviously, and now we've had a pullback. This is a chart of Bitcoin Cash against Bitcoin. So the proponents of Bitcoin Cash.
Nick, is that, sorry, I have to interrupt. Is that dollars or like peanuts?
This is Bitcoin Cash against Bitcoin. If you want to look at it.
Okay. So it's analogy. Okay.
Okay. So if we want to look at it in US dollar terms, this is in euro. I can put it into US dollar.
One heck of a spike.
So yeah, here's my chart of Bitcoin Cash US dollar. So in a couple of days, yeah, we went from 633 to 3,000. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal. But if we look at this chart, then Greg will tell you this is wave 1, this was wave 2, this was wave 3, and now we're getting ready for wave 5. Maybe. Depends if you're very strict on the rule about encroaching into wave 1. If you're Robert Miner and you say as long as you don't close in there, then it's okay, then we're still looking for wave 5 in Bitcoin Cash.
What kind of effect do you think the futures contract at the CME is going to have on the market, Nick?
That's very interesting because I think it needs people to go in and adopt it and people to go in and trade it. And I've seen CME go into other new markets. People have been quite slow to go in. So people like to watch other people trade it for a bit and before they jump in. So, but if the volume gets quite big, quite fast, then I think it'll be quite interesting. Up until now, Bitcoin has traded quite technically, like old school technically, like a lot of patterns that don't work in other markets still work in Bitcoin. Old traditional technical analysis. So it's been quite nice to trade. And I keep telling people, once the professionals are on the other side of you, like wait for them to run your stops or bust patterns or know what you're going to do. I think it will change how it trades. I'm really curious to see how it'll work because sometimes Bitcoin can have big moves at weekends when CME will be closed. So, I think that we might see big moves then on Friday and Monday as people de-risk and re-risk over the weekends because they don't want to be holding a bunch of Bitcoins on a weekend that collapse.
The owner of Interactive Brokers, Nick, and maybe you could explain it to me. Did you see his interview about his concerns?
Yeah, so his concerns basically are that the risk, now this is a derivatives market and all the risk at CME is pooled, and so now they're linking the risk in Bitcoin to the rest of the real market, and that could bring the whole derivatives and futures markets down if something bad happens. And it's certainly true, like this rally in Bitcoin, what was this triggered by? Venezuela. You know, these cryptocurrencies to people in China or Venezuela are really important. They've got massive hyperinflation. I have so many people in my group from South America, and this is a really good, these cryptocurrencies are a really good hedge for them, or place to hide. So
Okay.
I think a lot of this rally was on the Venezuela default. So.
Right. It gives people an option instead of the black market currency. Yeah.
Definitely does.
Okay, so he's just worried about over leveraging. He mentioned something about that if they had limits, if they had, you know, a lot of futures contracts have trading limits, and the way Bitcoin trades, it would be ridiculous because it would take so many days of a limit move to catch up.
They built a whole derivatives market on housing and nearly crashed everything, didn't they? So
yeah, that's true.
I think Bitcoin's smaller than the housing market.
Yeah, you can't live in a Bitcoin.
You can't live in a Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, Dale. At least housing, you know, that was something tangible that they built the market on.
You can live in it until the bank takes it away.
Well,
then sells it to a hedge fund, and then the hedge fund rents it to you. That's how it went down in America. People lost their homes. Hedge funds go, huh, this could be a new asset class. Pretty good yield. We buy these things in foreclosure, fix them up, and rent them to the people that got evicted. What do you think of that? Robber barons, huh? So someone's asking about missing coins in Ethereum. Are there missing coins in Ethereum?
I think there's missing coins in all of them. Like, it's quite easy. You have to be so careful. If you send your Bitcoins from a wallet, from your wallet to somebody else's wallet, and there's no bank in the middle. Like, one of the good things about it is there's no bank in the middle, and there's no middleman, and there's no taxman that can say, oh no,
that's a big appeal.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you send it to the wrong address, or if you send Bitcoin to an Ethereum wallet, or vice versa, it's gone forever. So there's no bank to go to and say, oops, I made a mistake. Can you reverse this wire? Because it doesn't happen. So you have to be really careful. Wow. There's lots of pitfalls. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what a God! I don't know. I feel like it's like the Twilight Zone to me.
You should only transfer Bitcoins when sober. So important things like that will apply. So
yeah, Ron Serling probably came up with this. But all right. So what else?
So here we are. So here we are in Bitcoin. For me, like, I know Greg is doing this differently, but I'm looking at fib extensions from the original move back in 2014, 2015 in Bitcoin. In each one of these Fibonacci expansion levels, we've bounced off. So we got to the 1.618 we blew through. The 2.618 we bounced off it. It came back and tagged the 1.618. Then we got to the 4.236. We came back and we tagged that 2.618. So here we are at the next one, which is the 6.854 at 8,000. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility here that we come back and we tag 4,800. So it's quite interesting. So here we are on the daily, and here we are on the daily, and we're at new highs. We closed at new highs yesterday, but I don't like markets that get to new highs and then just sit there. To me, that's like a flashing red warning, because when a market gets to new highs, you really want to see buyers come in and go, woohoo, we're on our way on the next swing higher, get in, before it goes to that, buy now or lose forever. So we need to see some of that this weekend, really, or I think that we're at risk of this being an irregular or flat correction, and we see another swing higher.
Nice.
That's my view.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, when's the last time you've done a 4.6 or 6.8 fib extension on anything?
Well, it's funny.
Tell me, really, when?
Well, like, for an hour a day, I put them on AIM stocks, which are the UK penny stocks. And so I'm used to it, and I do a lot of these small coins, and yeah, they really do like go into orbit when they take off. They just take off, and so I suppose it's something not many people do, but I have quite a lot of fun doing it. So
Yeah,
I'm becoming skilled at this. Yes. So, and yeah, we're going to be doing this in Bitcoin Cash if this keeps going as well. So I've got them all marked. We'll see if we keep going. In this next leg higher, perhaps we'll get to 5,000 in Bitcoin Cash. So there's this guy. So the people who own a lot of Bitcoins or own a lot, the crypto billionaires, they're all known as whales. And there's a whale proponent of Bitcoin Cash called Roger Ver. And he just went to Korea, which is one of the biggest markets for cryptocurrencies. And he was telling everybody, I was watching some of his speak, he was basically saying, Bitcoin Cash is the new Bitcoin, and eventually Bitcoin's going to die. Bitcoin Cash is going to be the winner. So we've seen massive volume from a lot of this volume was people in Korea buying it. The scary thing about this.
Why Korea though, Nick? Why are they? I mean, they're not in any. Huh?
I think there's a huge competition between China and Korea about who's going to control the market. There's a lot of miners in China too.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very popular in that side of the world. So,
Okay. Maybe if you have a lot of Bitcoin, it protects you from radiation.
Yeah, maybe. But there's a lot of other coins. It's Bitcoin, every time, so when we look at the chart of Bitcoin and we think, oh, this is a disaster, end of the world for cryptos, but every time Bitcoin comes up, people don't take their money out and put it into fiat. They put it into other coins. So a lot of the other coins, especially what you see when Bitcoin first sells off, is you see the big cap alternate coins, so Dash, Ripple, Litecoin. Since the split, Bitcoin Cash, believe it or not, by market capitalization, is the third biggest coin. So it's gone from being zero to sort of 17 billion or something.
In what amount of time? What amount of time?
Nick,
The fork was in August, end of August, so we've done it in 2 months. So in internet funny money, you really can make money out of nothing. So.
Wow.
Nick, I have a question for you. First of all, I have to say that I'm extremely skeptical about the whole thing. That one of the reasons these cryptocurrencies have gained so much in value. I think the reason they've gained so much in value is purely speculation. It's the same kind of speculation that blew up the tulip mania in the 17th century in Netherlands.
Everyone who's not long says that, Steve, because they're jealous they didn't make $1 million.
Oh, I'm absolutely fine not being long, and I do.
Don't you wish you would have been 2 years ago? You had like 10 grand in Bitcoin.
No, and I will explain why. Somebody would be this guy. Yeah, I'll explain.
A good one. All right,
I'll explain.
Wait, I gotta jump in and say that's crap. No way.
No, it's not crap, and I'll explain why. Because if
crap.
I was the kind of person that had the mentality that wanted to be long that, I wouldn't have money to put in that, because I would have blown myself up in the previous attempt of something that can go parabolic and failed. Because history shows that people with that kind of a mentality end up being broke. You might get lucky and get your first one being a hit, and then yes, you're extremely lucky, but I bet that the same kind of people would have bet on something else that failed, but they just didn't have the time to do it before, or they didn't have the money to do it before, etc., etc. And
but you know what, buddy? Life is about now. I bet they're having a good time.
Oh, I have no.
The thing is that there are millennials that are cleaning up, they're making out like bandits, and a lot of people got rich in the tech boom, and then it all collapsed. But look what we're left with from the tech boom: eBay, Amazon, Google, like monster Apple, like they're monster companies. So yeah, a lot of them will fail, a lot of people will lose money when it collapses, but some of them will be massive winners. Massive.
Of course, there's no question. There are always some people that are massive winners in this case, but seeing also questions, from our intercom that I'm having a look from time to time, what comes in, and what comes out, I can tell you that unfortunately a lot of people that are interested in cryptocurrencies are absolutely amateurs in anything that has to do with investing. But my question is the following, Nick. Supposedly a lot of the value goes by the fact that, you know, you're going to put money there. For example, you gave the example of Venezuela, okay, because they are in a very serious state. Everything is defaulting. Inflation is running in the hundreds. Money has no value. There is a black market for dollars, which has actually gone completely parabolic, etc., etc. My question is the following. I'm guessing that exchanges that sell you Bitcoins do not accept people coming in with suitcases. And then people from Venezuela do not physically take a suitcase full of money and take it to an exchange to buy Bitcoin. So my question is the following. How can we claim that Bitcoin gives you the ability of going under the radar, since I'm guessing that, okay, I can understand that people that invested initially and they saw their wealth like explode, now that kind of wealth that they've created out of thin air, in essence, they can hide it because nobody knows how much it is, etc. But a person that wants to buy Bitcoin.
When I bought Bitcoin in 2011, I bought it from a guy I met in a pub. Like, there was no bank in the middle. Like, I gave him money.
I understand, but at the moment, let's say you want to buy a big quantity of Bitcoins, let's say 200,000.
That's still over-the-counter brokers. Like, you don't have to open anything. Oh, yeah. There is more Bitcoin transacted over the counter than through the exchanges. The exchange volume that you see is not reliable because more is transacted over the counter than it is on exchange. And these exchanges are huge.
Yeah, I have another question. Let's say, because I don't know how it works, so I'm trying to ask questions that I guess more people have. Let's say that you meet a person that's willing to sell you Bitcoins like that. Are you actually going to hand them over a suitcase and trust their goodwill? I don't know. I mean, what is the party that guarantees that I'm going to find a person that's willing to sell a Bitcoin to me, give them a suitcase of money, and they actually do that?
Yeah, but there isn't one. The whole point of the decentralized thing is nobody can get in the middle of your transaction. So you give somebody money, and they give you this little digital thing that you carry on a little, you know. God, I had them on a little.
So how many people are actually willing to give a big amount in a really decentralized way like the one you mentioned?
Desperate people in Venezuela. Yeah. And people are making huge money. Like, the transaction fees are huge. And like, there are people making a lot of money in this. And the exchanges, for example, when Bitcoin Cash came out, some of the exchanges that were like Coinbase, which is one of the biggest one in America, that's on the side of Bitcoin Core, said it wasn't going to give its clients their Bitcoin Cash. And some of the other exchanges, like Bittrex or whatever, they gave them. And the exchanges that gave them their clients them, it's now the most transacted coin on exchange. It's the most bought and sold coin on exchange. And they make massive fees. And you remember the bad old days of Forex brokers, where the spread was so wide you could drive a bus through, and the exchanges trade against you? That's what cryptocurrency exchanges are like right now. So if you learned some skills in the bad old days of Forex brokers, you can do quite well on these exchanges, because you think about it, you know, most people are coming in because they're attracted to the money. They know nothing about trading, and they're quite complicated platforms. They're not just click the screen and buy and sell. They show the ladder, and you have to learn how the order types, you know, complicated order types. It's not like MT4 made easy. And so, yeah, they're cleaning up, taking money from these people. Coinbase is the biggest American broker, has been opening 1 million accounts a month. That's a lot.
Personally, I think that if Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency that wants to survive will either have to start getting normalized in all senses, which means reduced volatility, more transparent way of doing the exchanges, much smaller spreads, because you just mentioned that issue as well. And that actually probably is going to take away a lot of the sign that some of the people involved with it now see. So what I'm trying to say is that I do think that cryptocurrencies in one form or the other are going to survive, but the ones that are going to survive, for them, in order for them to survive in the longer term, will have to have lost the vast majority of the characteristics that people that currently found them worthwhile are looking for. So I do think that cryptocurrencies is a nice experiment, and they will not vanish, they will not disappear.
I agree, and I think that Bitcoin needs to decide. Part of this argument between the parties in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin really needs to decide: is it going to be a fast payment method, or is it going to be a store of value that people can buy and invest in? And that's what I think the main argument comes down to. And there's also the privacy argument. Do we want it to be decentralized so nobody can stop you sending money to somebody? Or the Bitcoin core plan, SegWit, is a little bit more controlled now. And so there are some other coins. There's one like Monero, which is advertising itself as, and I think will be secret payments. So people who used to use cryptocurrencies to send payments to people that they didn't want anyone to know about, some of these are going to fill that gap. And so I don't think Bitcoin can be all things to everybody, but there are so many. There's over 1,000 coins, and there's some other really interesting, payment ones. I think Dash is a really interesting coin. Ripple is the one that's backed by the banks that they're just about to use for transatlantic payments. That's actually not decentralized, and it's a token, but that's owned by the banks. But that is still hugely popular because it's seen as backed by the banks, so people invest in Ripple.
Ever drink Ripple?
No, is it nice?
Oh, you know it. You giggle. You giggle. All right.
So you paying for a cider or something?
God, it's great hearing your voice.
So cool. I was just going to mention, if anybody does have access to trade, because some of the FX brokers will let you trade some of the big coins like Dash. I really like this Litecoin at the moment. I think this one has potential to go up next, if you have access to it.
Great to have you, Nick. I missed you.
You're very welcome. I'll get out of the way for Blake. Thanks, everybody.
We missed you.
Oh, I'll be back. Don't worry.
All right, you better.
Okay.
I'm going to buy a dessert one day. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh,
no, Steve.
Yeah, no, I'm here. And
Bitcoins. Those Bitcoins I bought Steve Blake about 5 years ago. He doesn't really. I just keep them because he doesn't. He doesn't think they're, He
thinks they're worthless. Hey, look, Steve, I just harassing you because I look back, and I one of the things I had a hard time getting my head wrapped around back when Bitcoin was first launched is though its usage, and I had a hard time personally wrapping my head around supporting I guess being the chief currency strategist at WiseTrade too, I never really looked at the cryptocurrency as it was being called as being widely adopted as it is, and so I turn around and I kick myself in the butt for not really being more open-minded to it, and I think a lot of it had to do with maybe the way it was being used between different type of organizations, be it terrorist organizations or different kind of black market type of uses. But the fact of the matter is, it is more being adopted, and I think that it is here to stay to a certain extent, and so I'm waiting for a lull or a shakeout or something, because I agree with what Nick had to say. If I look back in the 1990s, and let me just give you a personal example of what had happened to me. So everybody knew the internet was going to be the next biggest, greatest thing. Okay, everybody knew. And there were companies from like internet service providers to internet telephony to yada 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 yada. Thousands of different offerings in the internet space, and we are going to have a very similar shakeout. It's destined to happen. There will be survivors. Look, and what Nick said is look at today. Your Amazons, your Googles, your Facebooks of the world. There are blockchain and Bitcoin crypto ICOs that will survive, and they'll be widely adopted to their extent. But for example, and I'm going to give you a personal example, as an investor back in the 90s, in the late 90s, I had invested, and also keep in mind I was in my late 20s, I had invested a lot of money into companies that are now defunct. I'll give you a great example of a company that I bought. I bought into a company that was internet telephony. What is internet telephony? It's just like Skype. It was basically allowed people to see each other over the internet and talk. Unfortunately, because of the leadership,
that was a big deal though, then, wasn't it?
It was a huge deal. It was a huge deal. It was called VisiTalk. Here, let me share it with you. VisiTalk. I had a lot of money put into this company, VisiTalk, private company information. VisiTalk was a way back when. VisiTalk was as an internet telephony company, and it was a big deal, but the leadership was horrible, and the company went bankrupt. I mean, they were typical of every social media platform today. They did exactly the same mistakes that Silicon Valley did back in the 90s, in the late 90s. They had lavish offices. The owner had a race car. It's all the same crap. It's the same thing that you see happen. Same thing that we see happen here over in the last several years in Silicon Valley. It's the same type of bubble that's going to burst, and it's going to happen. So yes, you're going to have those that survive. And it's so funny because it's not funny. I mean, it's funny looking back. That company that I invested a lot of money in too, in today's dollars, a lot of money in today's dollars, $50,000 back then was a big amount. That's think about, that's probably $150,000 in today's money of investments that I saw go vanish. But it was the times. And right now there are a lot of ICOs out there. Is that the correct term, Nick? ICOs?
Yeah, they're initial
currency coin offerings.
Yeah, there's a lot of ICOs out there, and there's going to be a lot of them that do not survive. There will be survivors. Picking the right ones, the ones that are most widely adopted, that are being used by brokers, that's probably your safest bet. I mean, if I was to put any money into a cryptocurrency, not maybe at this moment in time, but in the future, it's going to be one that's more adopted amongst the masses. And then you've got a shot at making money, whether it is Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum or Litecoin or whatever it is.
I think people need to think outside of payments and store of value. So there's going to be huge benefit in things like storing medical records and libraries and in blockchain, like massive applications. And then in technological stuff as well, like things that we can't even imagine right now. But the pace of technological advance is
Damn it.
huge, and
Sorry.
blockchain is a big step in it.
Yeah, and so there, you know what, Nick, I believe that there's going to be uses for it, and I wasn't a believer, and I am a believer, but that doesn't make me an investor either at this moment. I think I think you have to. There are going to be certain ones, and it's unclear to me where they are, but I think that those are the types of things that we'll see. We'll get more clarity as a shakeout will occur, and again, you know, the strong will survive. It's very historic, you know, as far as what happens with these types of situations. I mean, history does tend to repeat itself, and it probably will in this space to some certain extent. Hey, just FYI, this dollar Canadian is ripping. I bought it. I literally took an 8-pip scalp when it dipped down here to 60. You were talking, and I picked some up, and I bought it at 70 and I sold it at 70. I'll tell you, I bought it at 71, sold it at 78. You can kind of see what I did there. And I just scalped it while you were chit-chatting. You and Steve were chit-chatting, and I didn't think it was going to break out, but it did. I mean, it broke that resistance. We were looking for a break above this resistance or this support. It was an inline print, and I didn't think it was going to make a push, but you know, the market is extremely long the Canadian currency, so the dollar Canadian is getting, or the Canadian currency is getting sold because, you know, speculators are very long the Canadian currency right now. So that makes sense. It makes sense why it's moving higher. But anyway, that's the move that we're seeing right now. I'm pretty much done for the day. I closed out, for those of you that have been trading the yen pairs. I closed out the pattern in play last night when it was at 112.50, and when we were down here last night, and I do expect a move here over the next couple of days, maybe Sunday, Monday, back up to like the 113 level. That I'm expecting. Whether we get it or not is to be seen, but I am going to be a seller as we close in on 113 again. The reason why is because this is I think this is more of a channel that's being formed. Everything that I blogged about with Grega the last couple of days, I still am in, you know, complete agreement that I believe that they're still going to continue to roll over, and we're going to see yen strength eventually. But the stock markets right now are fairly well bid. You know, well, they're very well bid. We were in all-time highs yesterday on a couple of different indexes. So that risk appetite should continue to keep the yen at bay right now. But I think that, you know, if the market does get a little risk averse, we're going to see some downside pressure in these yen pairs. And we're already starting to see it in like the euro yen and the pound yen, the Aussie yen. I mean, the Aussie yen and New Zealand yen are in very, very critical levels of support, and the Canadian yen is breaking down too. It's at pretty critical support here as well. So these yen pairs look very bearish. You know, but I have a hard time chasing these yen pairs down at these prices. I will be selling on rallies moving forward. There is a currency that I actually did short, currency pair I did short just a little while ago, is the Euro New Zealand. So if you go to ForexAnalytix, go look at the analysis from the Euro New Zealand last night. This is the daily chart from last night. I was expecting a move above highs to reach, you know, near 174 to look for a reversal, you know, divergent RSI. You can you know, read it all right here. And right now we're there. We actually moved up to the 127% extension. We're struggling up here, and I wouldn't be surprised if we, you know, come back down again. The euro is under pressure right now, so that is entirely possible that happens. And you have to also think about this this Euro New Zealand. If you look at just what's happened over the last week and a half, we've gone from 166 to 174. That's an 800 pip move in a week and a half. So 800 pips in a week and a half is a pretty aggressive move, so I wouldn't. I would imagine that we backtrack a little bit. Are we in an uptrend? Yes. Is this a counter trend type of trade? Yes. That's why I'm not comfortable, establishing a big position or really talking too extensively about it. Like, oh, I'm going to stay in this for the next week or two. Hey, I'd be happy if we just came back down to the breakout point. So that's the Euro New Zealand is something that I'm trying to take advantage of currently, and we'll see how the rest of the morning shakes out. Nick, are you still around? I know you were just here. I'm not too sure if you're still listening in. I know she talked a lot about Bitcoin, but I'm not sure if she's here. Let me double check. Looks like she had checked out already. Okay. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the U.S. dollar, Japanese yen. Steve, did you have any comments about any type of any currencies that you see out there? Because I'm going to answer some questions really quick.
For me, important move is cable's confirmation today that the triangle we had drawn is actually a triangle, because without redrawing it at all, I'm actually looking another. Since some time ago, I'm looking at another triangle on the cable lake. Let me show you. This is what a 1 hour chart. No, if you go to the daily.
That's a 1 hour. Yeah, that's a 1 hour.
If you go to the daily. Yeah, I'm looking at the triangle that actually begins from the first rebound we had after the move lower. No. From the first rebound after the move lower.
First rebound.
Yeah. So let me give you a date. 13th of October. From that, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you're thinking like this.
Yes, that I had been drawn. I have drawn that and posted it some time ago, and then use the low before that high, and connect the rest to see what I think is a triangle. So use the low we had on the 6th of October. Yeah, 6th of October. The week low from
like this.
Yes. I think this is a triangle.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, I when we hit the 786 today, when I got up, I shorted. The guys and gals in the chat room know I shorted the pound, and it was right at the. Amanda had noted it was the 11 o'clock fix, and then all of a sudden, I was short the thing, and I made 20 pips so fast. It's kind of like I shorted it and. 2 minutes later, it dropped 20 pips, and I'm like, "Wow, that was fast." I didn't stick around for the 50 pip move. I just made a quick 20, but I was trading it off that semi-harmonic pattern that I was drawing for you guys here. But yeah, we could be in a tight type of consolidation, regardless whether that's it or maybe it's a channel. Regardless. It's very choppy, isn't it, Steve? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Nasty choppy, and you have to when you see these types of ranges, especially when they're only like in this case they're only 200 pips wide. You've got to trade extremes. You got to look at extremes, and that's a good look, Steve. So I'm gonna keep those lines drawn on my charts. Thank you very much.
Looks like a continuation formation to me.
What's that?
Looks like a continuation formation.
Of lower. Well, see, okay. Yeah. So one thing I'll point out here.
Blake, actually, I have to tell you that cable is one of the pairs that keep me skeptical about the dollar breaking down from here. The fact, that it doesn't break higher, and today's reversal from the triangle once again, since we came in the triangle moving lower, I still believe that the chances are probably a little bit higher that we're going to come out of the triangle resuming lower.
Right. Okay. So this is the and this is to Dale's point and to your point as well. The one thing that I always get a little worried is if I take the distance of this, what you would think is the pole, okay? Once we pass 50% of the distance of that pole, basically, like now this is too elongated, so I do believe we could break either higher or lower. But you know, when you're talking technicals, you can go, oh, okay, that's great, we can break higher or lower. But it really has to be more, I think, related to a, you know, headline, you know, or why, you know, give me the whys, you know, why is it breaking higher, why is it breaking lower? And it probably has more to do with you know, Brexit at this point, something unforeseen that, you know, that I definitely have, you know, lost my touch in palm reading and astro forecasting, so I don't know where, you know, which direction it's going to break, but because if
a little extra element, sorry to interrupt, a little extra element, because I tend to notice these things, is just look at the structure of the triangle, you know, closer of the triangle we just drew, right?
Well, yeah.
So if you look at it closer, just look the nature of the moves lower within the triangle and the nature of the moves higher within the triangle. You see what I mean?
No.
I mean, for example, look at the move lower from the 1st of November.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, and now compare it with how we got back to the triangle's resistance.
Right. It's very choppy on the way back up and big swift drops. So
yes.
So will we break lower? I mean, you look, if you look at this like longer term formation, yeah, you know, I think the risk is tilted to the downside. I do. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be shorting right now, and I don't mind being on the short side of it. Obviously, this morning I picked it off right here, and like I said, I made like 20 pips really fast, but we are, you know, for argument's sake, we're in the middle of the apex of this big triangle, and it is messy. It's really messy. It's very dangerous. You know, it's dangerous to be
45 days already chopping around there.
Yeah, it's very dangerous to be getting too directional. Hey, really quick, Steve, I'm just going to answer a couple of quick questions really quick. Bill from our chat room says, is there there's a fundamental flaw with cryptocurrencies that cannot be overcome by any currency I know of the market, and that is it was founded by bad money, i.e. Illicit transactions. People are using it to create good money out of bad. Now to get into it, you have to put good money into it, and that good money turns bad. It's a perfect example of Gresham's law. And you know my reservations on underlying technology, and so then that was like actually, you know, my big issue in the beginning is why and how it was being used is why I wasn't an early adopter. So I don't know. I'm skeptical, and I'm definitely not a buyer at these times. You know, I'm more conservative when it comes to that type of stuff. Let's see. Arif says, when the CME guarantees a contract, I will take a look. Yeah. Arif also asked about crude. You know, crude oil. This is. Let's take a look at it really fast. Crude. Okay, it actually, I was looking at it as more, you know, possibly a bearish breakdown yesterday, but it never completed. So the important thing you have to note about crude is this, and this is really, in my opinion, bottom line, and Steve will probably agree with me. As long as we stay above that support, there is no reason to be bearish. I don't think. As long as we stay above the breakout point, no reason to be bearish. And I don't trade crude, but you know, this is also one of the things that makes me a little hesitant about being short the Canadian currency because of the, long-standing, correlation between the two. But crude, hey, it's bid as long as it stays above 54.50 maybe or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. Martin says, hey Blake, the Euro New Zealand move and the Euro Aussie would be logic with risk off, hard to explain with risk on, or am I missing something? Thanks. Martin, and I know Dale, you have an interview today, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to just answer this last question, then I'm going to let you go. So Euro New Zealand, Euro Aussie it tends to be related to risk on, risk off. So in other words, commodity currencies get hit, European currency rallies. In this case, that's a risk off. We've seen that correlation break down, especially over the last couple of years. The reason why, I believe, Martin, is because we are in a period of potentially a higher inflationary type of period historically. So as inflation starts to really gain traction and rates go higher, these commodity currencies could very easily outperform everything else. So I don't necessarily relate them to risk on and risk off like I have in years past. I think that correlation is really broken down, and we are seeing signs of inflationary pressures, whether it's crude or it's, producer prices or consumer prices, or wage inflation. Inflation is starting to take hold, and as inflation starts to take hold, commodities become hot commodities. I hate using that term, but that should answer your question. Hey, Dale, I don't want to bleed into your interview, so that's it for me. And I'm sorry I didn't get to get more questions today.
Well,
but I hope
Blake,
you guys have a great Friday.
I think it's a very interesting coincidence that you said that your palm reading and astro trading skills need to be polished up because Norm Winsky's with us. You may want.
Well, I'm glad that Norm's here because I sure as hell do not know how to predict the future with those types of things.
Well, he's got a great course. I'm going to see if he'll make space for you.
Hey, you know what? I'll be very interested to see what and hear what Norm has to say. So,
well, here we go.
All right, guys.
All right. Hey, Norm, how are you? I just made you the presenter. Mr. Planet, Mr. Moon, fly me to the moon and let me trade just like a star.
Dale,
I can make a lot of pips on Jupiter and Mars. Hi, Norm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear my song?
Hello?
Hi.
I hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me or if I'm in.
I can hear you, Norm.
Can you see my
screen? Loud and clear.
Let's take turns so we can talk. I pushed the button to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. I see Dee's cattle daily.
Very good. Okay. Well, then we're good to go.
We are.
Thanks for having me on your show, Dale.
Oh, it's
Did you want to make any kind of introduction, or did you want to make any kind of introduction, or should I introduce myself?
Norm Winsky, former option trader, member of the SIBO. I read a story that Norm wrote in his writings near October '87, before the crash. He saw some unstable things and dumped all his memberships, sold all his memberships. So that was a great story, Norm. Are we in that zone again? If you own seats or a lot of assets, would you be lightening up?
Well, it's not quite the same because back then, the seat and you owned a piece of the exchange, and and the
now they're
membership.
public.
In the long term, a membership, the price of a seat could be rather volatile. Just for example, in 29 at the peak, a New York Stock Exchange seat went for $550,000. That's 1929 money. And at the bottom there, in late '74, early '75, the same seat went for $35,000. So
wow.
I'm a student of financial and economic history, and I knew that, and I thought the way the market was behaving, the stock market was behaving back there in 87, and we had a big lineup of the planets right around August 25th. that I'd read about the Mayan harmonic convergence, where the Mayans base their calendar on the planets, and they pointed out that you were at the end of their calendar era on their calendar on around the 25th of August of 1987, and there was a 6-planet lineup there on that day, and the market was rather bubbly back then, relative to those times, and I decided that it looked like 1929. In the short run, I was right. In the long run, obviously, I was grossly wrong. Right?
Okay.
But anyway,
that's a great story, though.
I was looking to get out of there.
I knew guys who traded seats. So,
but I was, I was on the floor there. I was an old man then. I got there when I was 24, and then 12 years later, I'm 36, 37, 36 years old.
You wish you were 36 again.
Well, back then, if you were on the floor, I think you know that jumping up and down, yelling and screaming all day is sort of the financial equivalent of being an NFL football player. So, the average NFL player the average NFL player lasts 5 years. So, I was there 12 years. I was getting to be an old man, and it wasn't as much fun as it was when I got there. I was in my 20s when I got there, and when I got there, the CBOE was a new exchange. They were starving for bodies with a pulse. You got money, you got a pulse, come on board,
Yeah.
Later on, they started getting all the corporate types in there, and they'd have the trading firms hire people, whether based on you got an MBA or you're a chess champion or bridge champion, and they were working for some firm. When I got there, it was all individual, wild and crazy entrepreneur individual types. So a whole different personality people there. And
now that you're an altacocker, what do you see from your rocking chair?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was my long-term dream anyway. I didn't want to be jumping up and down, yelling and screaming all day long. I mean, I enjoyed it for a while. It was fun, but now
you just rock back and forth real fast, right?
Exactly. You could be in a nice soft chair, have your feet up, That's it. That was my long-term dream, and I wanted to get out of Chicago and go where the sunshine was. So I ended up a few years later moving to Florida, and that's where I am now.
Okay, buddy.
All right. Anyway, so I got most of my life I've been looking at the markets. I started looking at the markets when I was 15 years old. I'm 66 now, so it's a long time. I was on the floor there of the CBOE and the Chicago Board of Trade over a 12-year period. Yep. So, and I was there. Yep. There's that. I hope you got to watch that video, by the way, I sent out last week. That was great. It talked about the last bastion of free markets during the crash. 87 was the Board of Trade's maxi contract, which was on the MMI, major market index.
Yeah,
that was the only thing. That was the only thing trading in the middle of that day. I was trading that upstairs. I had sold my seats, so I was trading from upstairs. And a fellow that I know, Blair Hall, that tells on the video how he went down to the pit there and bought the bottom. I was buying. I didn't. It wasn't as good as he was. He paid $2.85 at the bottom. I remember paying $2.90. But then $5 was nothing. That was like a tick. It was, right. And it was $250 a handle. So
right.
So that thing traded several times back and forth in $100 range that day. So that was $25,000 range on one contract.
Nice.
Yep. Anyway, so let's get to the markets here. I was last on your show, I believe, on October the 13th. I talked about I think the new moon. I should have checked.
Yeah, you're talking lunar cycles last time.
Absolutely. Let's see. There was a new moon coming up on I was on there on Friday the 13th, right? Last on the Friday the 13th. We had a new moon coming up on the 19th. I didn't check that. I apologize. You can go back and check. Well, we'll probably be able to see that on the charts I'm showing you. But I focused on early November, had the folks gone and done their homework and researched the moon, then they would have known that there was a full moon in early November on the Saturday the 4th. And so we're going to look at that time. That's where I'm going to focus on. And so, for example, there was a full moon in the sign of Taurus the bull. And you might think that might have something to do with cattle. And so I put the cattle chart there. And there you go. You got to, what we look for is the market's at an extreme. So if look at that, you got a rally all the way from August till early November. And then we have a full moon in Taurus the bull. And look what happens. There you go. Did you sell the exact high? No, you were off by 20 points, and the cattle is, it's almost nothing. It's like $80. That was a high bar, 2 bars before on the daily chart. But then this is even better for traders because you get to sell against the previous high, and this high was only 20 points lower, which for the folks that don't know about trading cattle, each handle is $400. 20 points would be 1/5 of the handle, or about $80. So that's not too bad. You get to risk very little money there, and then it dropped over the next couple of weeks. This chart here is because we don't care about what's coming up in cattle. I'm not on my list anymore, but just to show you what happened, it dropped 8 handles. That's $3,200. Every handle is $400. So that's a nice trade. Okay.
Very nice.
When do you agree?
Yes, very nice.
Okay, cotton, here's what you don't want to see. If you have a market, this was on my list to watch. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a good trade. And so if the market is just going sideways like this cotton chart was, what cotton market was, then don't do anything. So we're looking for something like this where you have market gets to an extreme and just goes up, 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 or down, down, down into one of our key dates. Then you have a good chance for a reversal. All these things are sort of subject to Newton's law. For every action, there's an opposite equal reaction. So if the market's going sideways, chances are it's going to be a mirror image from our key date, and it's just going to continue going sideways. So you don't want to do anything there. Take a pass. Here's wheat. Here's how little action and reaction you need. So wheat had a tiny little rally here. The greens are all in the slumber mode because I hate the fundamental.
After the harvest.
But it is harvest time. It is harvest time. Pretty soon the harvest will be done, and I like trading the greens in the wintertime when nobody knows what's going on. It's like all the information flow stops and everybody's blind, and then the greens kind of go back to fluctuating on the lunar cycle. So anyway, you had a little rally here in the wheat, and there's your top right there, and then you could have pulled out maybe 5 or 10 cents. You're not going to retire on that, but still it demonstrates that this stuff works pretty well even in a narrow range. Here's the gold is totally flat line on page 2. I'm on page 2 if anybody's following along, and you can see gold was totally flat line, so you wouldn't want to do with that. Here's bonds, though. Bonds had a nice rally into the full moon, and like the next day or so, they topped out and had a nice drop.
Yeah.
Here's your dollar. All you folks are currency traders, I think. So here you go. The moon nailed the top in the early part of November. There you go. There's your full moon on the Monday the 6th. With the full moon occurred on Saturday, so you have to look for the next regular trading day. And there's your high there, right on the 6th of November.
Perfect.
Yeah. And you notice that we don't have to look at moving averages. We don't have to look at oscillators. Don't look at the news. It's not for us. The reason why, only the seller buying. This is working on millions of years of human entrainment. In other words, the human brain is trained to follow the moon, whether you even know it or not. That's why these markets go up and down with the moon and the planets. We're all part of nature. We can't help it. Okay, here's your British pound. I put lots of currencies in here for you folks, and there you go. You're near the bottom, maybe a one bar late on the pound. You still would have been very close to the bottom there, and I don't think you would have had to risk very much on that trade before it popped up. You see that?
Nice call on euro, because a lot of people were short on there because they thought we had broken down from a head and shoulders top. So
there you go. The moon is one day early from the low of the month. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have had not much difference between that day and that day. So even if you bought there, you tell me how many pips or whatever that might be. I don't think it was very many, right? I don't think 50. You would have had to take. Okay. Is that a lot, or is that a small amount?
On a full contract, that's 500.
All right. You fasten your seatbelt, Dale, because this gets really exciting. We went from good to better to best Japanese yen. I couldn't quite put the arrow there because I would have blocked the 6th for November 6th. It nailed the exact bottom on the end.
How do you know when to get out?
I just use these simple trend lines. That's what I.
But on a winner, yeah, I mean, these turning points are good for entries. What about the exits?
sometime. Well, the next lunar event would be, these are full moons. Well, these were all full moons. So
Right.
guess what's coming up? We got a new moon coming up here in this weekend, tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay.
All right.
But just on the very short-term basis,
So
I just put these simple
you'll
trend lines.
let the lunar cycle complete for an exit.
I'm sorry, say again.
You'll let a lunar cycle complete from a full moon.
But not necessarily. The first thing is preserve your capital. And so
Right.
if you get into a trade, the first thing you want to do is, if once it gets going your way, you want to draw a simple trend line. And if it breaks that trend line, you get the hell out, right?
Okay. So you trail your stop
preserve-
based on technicals. All right.
Preserve your profits, right? Preserve your, let your profits run, cut your losses, right? Absolutely. Okay, let's look into the future. I'm gazing into my telescope and crystal ball, or whatever you want to call it. And thanks for the segue from that gentleman ahead of me there, right?
There are a lot of
Nice
skeptics. You know
He
that.
probably didn't realize it, but he provided a nice introduction
Yeah.
for me there. A nice segue.
Well, that's because we're all connected. It was providence.
There
ahead.
you go. It was in the
In the stars. It was
yeah, right.
connected.
I'm thinking of the global cosmic subconscious, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so here we go. So let's look at the future. I'll go to look at the future. Sometimes we go back and look at previous cycles. In August, we had the big solar eclipse go across the middle of the U.S. And so I went back and I wrote about this. And I don't know if I was on I forget if I was on your show back in August or not, but I wrote about it in my letter and talked about it on some other shows and maybe your show, that we had the big solar eclipse going across the middle of America. And this is not happened exactly that way. Before you had to go back to 1918 to find a similar pattern. And during that time, the ancient astrologers were very keen on these eclipses. They felt that not only did it could have an immediate effect, usually not so good. They forecasted bad things when the eclipse occurred, but it could also have sort of a shadow effect for the next 6 months, where something near that path or along that path, bad things could happen. Back in 1911, we had the eclipse in June, and during that time period, we had a pandemic we called the Spanish flu, which killed 30 million people.
Okay. It actually, I believe, ended World War I because the troops were too ill to fight.
I don't know about that, but that's an interesting idea. If you know that for a fact, that's a very interesting idea. I never heard of that. I do know my wife's, at least one of my wife's grandparents, and possibly two of them, died as a result of the Spanish flu, and her mom grew up an orphan as a result.
Huh.
Yep. And there we go. So now we go back one more cycle to 1811. Why should we care about 1811? Because 1811 gave us the New Madrid earthquake at what we call the New Madrid Fault. What is that? There's a tiny little town on the Mississippi River on the Missouri side called New Madrid. Back in 1811, we had the biggest earthquake in recorded earthquake in U.S. history. And it was so big that after the earthquake was done, the little town of New Madrid was not on the banks of the Mississippi, it was in the Mississippi. And it changed the course of the mighty Mississippi River. The earthquake was so big, they said it rang church bells in Boston 1,300 miles away. The earthquake was so big that they say that it reversed the course of Mississippi for 7 or 8 minutes. Mississippi was flowing the other way.
Yeah, and thank God it wasn't a highly populated area back then.
Then, exactly. But now you got several major population centers not too far from there. Obviously, St. Louis is probably the closest. And you got Indianapolis and Chicago, are all not just a few hundred miles away,
So you think there might be something this weekend?
Well, this is just an experimental idea. Obviously, it's not scientific because we only have a couple of cycles, lunar solar eclipses that went anywhere near the U.S. That the one in 1811 was actually over the U.S. is over North America. But still, so the pattern is 90 days. If we were to repeat that pattern, though, 90 days later, you know, the eclipse was on August 21, 2017. 90 days later, that's a key harmonic in cycles of 1/4 of the 360 is 90. 90 days is roughly 90 degrees of the motion of the Earth around the sun. And that would take you to November the 20th, which is on, that's on Monday. And we have a new moon over the weekend, so it could easily be fine-tuned to maybe perhaps this weekend on the new moon. So we're going to look to see if we have any kind of big event here over the next several days. Right? But just something interesting to watch. I don't know if you can make any money on that or not. You know, maybe go on Lloyd's of London there and buy some kind of disaster insurance. You know, to be along the risk, you know, rather than short the risk. You know. All right, anyway, so now let's look ahead here. Over the weekend, we have the new moon in Scorpio. We have our general usual suspects for the new moon, full moon, which are your financials, your grains, and precious metals. We want to watch those areas where we might have the market might be, those markets might be at an extreme. Then we also add whatever sign that moon is in to indicate possible extra markets. And so we'll have cocoa, hogs, and bonds. Okay, we also have some things happening with the U.S. cycles based on the beginning of the U.S. on July the 4th, 1776. And again, we have an extra kicker here for the U.S. stocks, T-bonds, and the U.S. dollar. And then on Tuesday night, the 21st, we have Neptune doing something called turning direct. It's called a station point relative to the Earth's motion to the other planets. So you go out in the night sky, it appears, there's your operative word, it appears that the planets on occasion individually stop their motion and reverse their direction. And the rule is that when the planets change trend, the markets change trend, and each planet is tuned to a particular commodity. And in this case, Neptune is oil. And the stock market has no filters, so it's tuned to everything. So it's anything important will affect the stock market. That's why I didn't bother to put the stock market in here, because I did not get into the things that I have in my November letter and when I was on your show in October, because I didn't have it then because I hadn't done the letter yet. Anyway, so then we're going to look ahead here. Now we're in the super moon, or excuse me, the technical term is a syzygy, where you have two or more cycles line up. In this case, it's a lunar syzygy or super moon. When the moon, about every 14 months, we have a full moon at perigee. Perigee is that the moon is not going around the Earth, not in a circle, it's elliptical. And so there's a point at which the moon is closest to the Earth, and there's a point at which the moon is farther from the Earth. And about every 14 months, these cycles line up. And you get the half cycle, the opposite cycle, 7 months later. So it alternates, you know. So we're coming and we're phasing into the moon, full moon, getting close to the Earth, and that will be culminating here at the end of the month. I've added December 1 on tacked it on the end of November because it lands on a Friday. And that weekend, we have not only the full moon at perigee, at its closest point. When you go out in the night sky and look at the moon, it'll look like extra big moon because it'll be closer. And we also have Mercury. One of my big things is when the planets turn direct or retrograde. That's called a station point. And again, when the planets change trend, the markets change trend. You get a lot of smaller cycles lining up together, that can turn into a really big deal. For example, back on
one of our members is saying your date that you have for the oil turn coming up, that's also an OPEC meeting.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times. I can't tell you how many times that happens. I look at the planetary cycles and say, you should go look at this market on that day. And then somebody says, did you know that such and such a news is happening, that going to happen then? Yeah. And I go, no, thanks for telling me. You know?
Yeah. Someone else
anyway,
is saying,
what's that again?
Another comment from Martin. Interesting to listen to Norm Dale. I remember a call last month, he mentioned a turn which was quite perfect in time, one day, if I remember. Question is, if that kind of turn, or short term as it was, lasted 2 days, and the market reversed up again, I don't know what the question is. You're Your timing on the call was good. It was just a 2-day trade. So your trades, what's the difference how long they last, right? How long, if you catch a turning point, you should at least be profitable and never let winners turn into losers.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead, Norm.
Yes, sir. So anyway, we have a coincidence here. This is pretty amazing. We have both the full moon and perigee. Like I said, that only occurs every 14 months, and coinciding with, I think, 8 hours. I just looked this up a little while ago. 8 hours difference between that and Mercury turning retrograde. That's a rare event. We had a cousin to this, sort of, back on May 18th, 19th of 2015. And I put that in my letter and went on some interview programs. I think you were on a sabbatical then, Dale, if I'm not mistaken. And so I said, this looks interesting. We have the new moon. It was a new moon within 1 day of Mercury turning retrograde. I said, this looks very important. And it turned out that was the high of the year for the stock market. So there you go. So we get some of these smaller cycles all piling up together. They can turn into be as big as the big cycles, as bigger than the bigger cycles,
Okay.
So there we go. So we have.
Why don't you tell people about your course?
I will do that now. That's a great segue there. You're a segue master today, Dale. Okay. So there we go. The next page is all about how they can get free stuff and learn how to do this. It's just all this stuff looks complicated because it's different. You've probably never saw anything like this before, I'm going to guess. And so it looks complicated, but once you get acclimated to it, used to it, nothing in my work is beyond a fifth grader. You don't have to be smarter than a fifth grader to do any of this stuff. You don't need any advanced math, no formulas, no fancy software. I give you the dates. I tell you how to do this. I do Astro. I do Fibonacci time cycles. I do fractals. All the stuff I showed you fractals. I think the last time I was on, where the correlation was amazing with some of the currencies and the fractal patterns that you get the whole year mapped out in advance. It's amazing. And I could teach a 10-year-old to do this stuff and some of this stuff in 10 minutes. All right, so you get the free class to share with you all the major methodologies that are in my letter and how I do that. And you get an individual class, 5 to 6 hours. It's all free with your money back guarantee, right, Dale? That was a joke, Dale. Free with a money back guarantee, you see. Okay.
Oh, the free, yeah. You'll wire the refund. Okay.
All righty. Anyway, so it is free, and then you get the current letter, and we go through the letter and learn all the different methodologies in there, how you can use these techniques to forecast the markets in advance, so you're not driving your car by looking in the rearview mirror. It's tough to drive your car. Always looking in the rearview mirror.
We have one more question from the audience. You live in Naples. Did you see anything astronomically that warned you about the hurricane that you lived through?
No, sir.
Okay, there's your answer.
Well,
okay. All right.
That was my theory is that was a once in a generation hurricane to hit Naples. I won't go into. I have theories about. I think I'm ideally situated here. If you've got to be in Florida, this place has been one of the places with for relative to where we are had a fewer number of hurricane hits than most places in Florida.
Okay. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Okay.
The last time we had a direct hit like that was, I think it was 1960-61. I think it was called Hurricane Camellia, and this was a tiny little town. Now, this was like, I don't even know how. I know when I first got here in the early '80s, 5,000 people were in Naples. It was that was small, and that was in the '60s. You'd probably even a lot smaller then. So then they got hit by the storm surge then.
Right.
Anyway, I was told that we were going to have 16-foot storm surge here. So I ran away to a friend on the East Coast, on the East Coast of Florida. I'm on the Gulf side,
Right.
When I got home, when I got home, my neighbors said that they had a little bit of water in the street. One neighbor said the water came up onto their driveway, and then that was it. Never got to their house, and the power was. And in my neighborhood here, we got very lucky. That power was back on in 3 hours, is what my neighbors told me.
Well, mazel tov. And Norm, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Have a great holiday.
And you know what mazel tov, Dale? Do you know what mazel tov means?
Lucky stars.
It means good stars, right?
Good stars. Okay. Well,
Good
good stars to you and your family.
Thank
And
you.
a
You
happy
too.
Thanksgiving, Norm.
Right.
And
So let's just wrap up how they get a hold of me here. You can get a hold
okay.
of me. And
Sure.
here's my phone in Florida, and you can call me on Skype, norm.winski, norm.winski. You can call me, or there's my email address on the screen there. And so there we go. And so you can call me right away, because I can only accommodate about 6 to 8 people a month, and it fills up fast. And I'm done for November, so you need to get in line for December. So the December letter will come out over the December 1 weekend, and you'll be in the queue. You'll be right at the top, at the front of the line there, to get your free class, individual class on Skype.
Okay, buddy.
Okay, thanks a lot for having me on. I hope I can help some of your folks improve their trading.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting quill to have in your trading arsenal. Norm Winski, thank you. Face, thank you. Just want to leave you guys with Guppy trying to break down under 48. It may try and recover, but I'm looking for lower levels. And I want to thank everyone. Hope you enjoyed our guests this week. Have another very good lineup next week. Spend a lot of time trying to give you good content. You know you're going to get it for at least 60 minutes every day with Face. I want to thank Blake and Steve, and a special appearance by Nicola Duke today, and great calls by the team. You're very welcome, Tom. And most of all, my friends, money comes and goes. Time is gone forever. Make it count. You're welcome, Elena. And above all, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Same to you, Kevin. Adios, my trading warrior brothers and sisters. And you too, Elena. And thank you again, Norm.
Thank you, Dale.